Hello everybody, I'm Clint Walker. This is Real Estate Appraiser Secrets. Today we're going to be talking about how do we handle DADU square footage. For those of you who are uninitiated, a DADU is a detached auxiliary dwelling unit, and it is living space that is not attached to the main part of the house. And that definition is important to understand because we're not going to be just talking about DADU square footage in this video. We're going to be talking about all square footage that's not connected to the primary living space. The standard that appraisers measure by is called the ANSI standard, or ANSI, as I like to call it. And it sort of sets a bunch of rules. If you've been to my Appraisal 101 class, I lay them all out for you. But it's what dictates, or it's what Fannie Mae is now using to dictate how an appraiser measures the property. So part of the ANSI standards are that any space that is below grade, and I mean any space that is below grade, is basement space. So your house has got four sides, theoretically. If any of those four sides of a level are below grade, that becomes basement. Another rule of ANSI is that any space that is not directly accessible from the main part of the dwelling is not included in the gross living area. So gross living area, or GLA, is going to be your space that's above grade and directly accessible or a part of the main house. So that would exclude detached auxiliary dwelling units. That would exclude finished area that is above a garage that maybe you have to access through a garage. I've been in some $8 million houses in Franklin that have a lot of that, and I have personally assisted on a reconsideration of value or an appraisal dispute where about 1,200 square feet of that supposedly 8,500 square foot house was space above a garage that was not accessible from the interior, and that was part of the reason that their appraisal came in $500,000 low. It wasn't the only reason. Another part of the reason was the appraiser who took that original assignment was not competent to appraise that area, but that's beside the point. So be on the lookout when you're walking in a space and you have these finished areas that are not connected to the main part of the house. They will not be included in the total square footage that the appraiser is bracketing. Bracketing is another one. If you haven't been to my Appraisal 101 class, bracketing is the technique that appraisers use to pull comps, and that dictates that we use properties that are superior and inferior in every relevant factor, and a relevant factor is defined by the appraiser, which is derived from the market. Superior and inferior in every relevant factor, and then compared to each other. So one factor that is almost always relevant is the gross living area, which, as I've said, is the first and second floor and third floor square footage, which is above grade. So if you've got a 2,000 square foot house, we're looking for houses that are, a little bit below 2,000, a little bit above 2,000. Sometimes appraisers try to go or stay within like 20% smaller and 20% bigger. We compare those, and we expect our subject to be somewhere in the middle there. If you have a DADU space, or if you have some sort of detached square footage that is significant in size, and you have mistakenly lumped that into your statement of square footage for the whole house, say you've got that 2,000 square foot house and it's got 1,000 square feet of space above a garage, or on the property but not accessible from the main dwelling, and so you're advertising that you've got a 3,000 square foot house. Your appraiser is not bracketing a 3,000 square foot house. your appraiser's bracketing a 2,000 square foot house, and then they are also going to attempt to bracket a 1,000 square foot detached finish area of space with something comparable. If it's a DADU, they're bracketing it with a DADU. If it's a rec room above a garage, they're bracketing it with that, or attempting to. Why is this important? Because, as I said a minute ago, they're going to try to bracket it by about 20% on either side. And so if you've priced this as if it were a 3,000 square foot house, and it's not, then your appraiser's not pulling 2,500 square foot comps and 3,500 square foot comps and putting them in their grid. They're pulling 1,500 square foot comps and 2,500 square foot comps. That's not exactly the right math, but you get what I'm saying. So you see how in combining that space, you have potentially escalated your listing into a price point where that's way above where the appraiser is going to put it. It doesn't mean that you're wrong, because if you've got a really nice DADU space, or if you've got a market that really values that detached space, it could be theoretically getting priced exactly like it would if it were a 3,000 square foot house. It is totally market dependent, and your appraiser ought to be going into it with that in mind. There is no rule of thumb. There is no always this or always that. The approaches to figuring it out are almost always the same, but the value conclusion is always market dependent and always market derived, and almost never the same from market to market. So, if you've got that detached space, if it's not accessible from the interior, in our MLS, there is a special field. It's called Other Square Footage, and that's where you put it. And they've got great little drop downs for you to talk about what it is. I would love for you to use those and be as accurate as possible. If it's a studio, call it a studio. If it's a full apartment where a teenager can live happily into their 30s and cook and live there like it's a whole separate dwelling, call it a separate apartment. If it is, those separate apartments can be rented out. I think I did a past video about that. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. But call it what it is, put it in the MLS correctly, and understand from a pricing standpoint what you've got and what you don't have, so that you can serve your client to the best of your ability and not set yourself and them up for a major disappointment, like a $500,000 disappointment when that appraisal comes in. Because, you might, in doing it right, you might not only be avoiding disappointment, you might be setting them up to make more money than they would have if you had just lumped it into square footage. Because in a past video, which I hope you've watched, I talked about the diminishing returns on square footage. But when you separate that detached space out, you might not be subject to the same diminishing returns as you would if you just kept building a bigger house. So treat that appropriately. If you need an objective opinion on it, a second set of eyes, call an appraiser, call me. Be happy to come out and do an appraisal for you, measure it out. Sometimes there's questions about whether the space can be included or should be included in GLA, and you don't even need an appraisal for that. You just need a professional measurement by a qualified person, who's an appraiser, to give you that answer. So reach out to us if we can help you. I hope that information is helpful. Thank you so much for watching. If you have a question or that gives you an idea for another video you'd like me to do, I'd love for you to leave it in the comments and I'll make that video. Anyway, have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.